December 20th, 1941. 9:17 a.m. Navy Department, Washington, D.C. The hallway smells of cigarette smoke and cold wool. Outside, a winter wind claws at the windows along Constitution Avenue. Inside, telephones ring without pause. Messengers move at a half-run, shoes scraping polished floors. On every desk, a map of the Pacific, Hawaii circled in red grease pencil. The ink is still fresh. In a cramped office on the fourth floor, a tall, hawk-faced admiral stands rigid behind his desk. His collar is starched to perfection. His eyes are sharp, unreadable. Admiral Ernest J. King does not sit. He has just been handed the official casualty summary from attack on Pearl Harbor. Battleships sunk. Aircraft destroyed. Thousands dead. The Pacific Fleet shattered in a single morning. Around him, junior officers whisper. They don't whisper about Japan. They whisper about him. King's temper is legend. His arrogance, notorious. He distrusts politicians. He distrusts the army. He distrusts allies, especially the British. He once said that when they get into trouble, Americans should send the Marines. It was not a joke. And now, just days after the worst naval disaster in American history, President Franklin D. Roosevelt has made him Commander-in-Chief, U.S. Fleet. Soon, he will also become Chief of Naval Operations. In other words, he will control America's Navy in its darkest hour. Not everyone is celebrating. Inside the White House, senior advisors murmur that King is too rigid, too combative, too independent. In the Navy's own ranks, officers quietly ask whether this is the right man for coalition war, for delicate diplomacy, for coordination with Britain's formidable First Sea Lord. Because King does not bend, he does not soften, and he does not apologize. You can almost hear the unspoken question hanging in the air of Washington. Why him? The United States Navy is bleeding. German U-boats are slipping through the Atlantic like sharks through dark water. In the Pacific, Japan advances across island chains with terrifying speed. Guam, Wake, the Philippines. America needs unity. America needs calm. Instead, it has Ernest King. He studies a Pacific map in silence. No theatrics. No visible rage. Just calculation. He taps a finger on the Marshall Islands. Then on the Gilberts. Then further west. His voice, when it comes, is low and controlled. We will hit them back. Everywhere we can. An aide hesitates. Sir, we don't have the ships. King doesn't blink. Then we will build them. That is the first clue. While others grieve, King is already thinking in tonnage, shipyards, convoy schedules. He sees not defeat, but production lines. Steel hulls sliding into water. Aircraft carriers replacing battleships as the centerpiece of naval war. But he is not easy. He clashes immediately with Douglas MacArthur in the Pacific over priorities. He resists British strategy in the Atlantic. He argues fiercely with Army Chief of Staff George C. Marshall over the Germany First policy. He believes Japan must be crushed with relentless pressure across the Pacific. Roosevelt listens to the arguments, watches the tension, and keeps King in place. Why? Because beneath the sharp edges, Roosevelt sees something others miss. King is relentless. He works 16-hour days. He memorizes shipping statistics. He knows the exact number of destroyers under repair. He tracks convoy losses personally. He pushes for escort carriers, hunter-killer groups, radar deployment. He is not charming. He is effective. In early 1942, as German submarines ravaged the U.S. East Coast during what sailors bitterly called the Second Happy Time, King refuses to immediately adopt the British convoy system. Critics howl. Newspapers question naval leadership. But within months, he reorganizes anti-submarine warfare, expands shipbuilding at unprecedented scale, and demands innovation. He makes enemies daily. He also builds a navy that will dwarf every other fleet on Earth. Still, resentment simmers. At strategy conferences, British officers describe him as cold, even hostile. Some Americans call him impossible. There are quiet conversations, very quiet, about whether Roosevelt should replace him with someone more diplomatic. Roosevelt does nothing. Instead, he promotes King again. By March 1942, Ernest King becomes the most powerful naval officer in American history, simultaneously Commander-in-Chief, U.S. Fleet, and Chief of Naval Operations. 2 jobs. 1 man. unprecedented authority, unprecedented pressure. And in private, some wonder if that concentration of power is dangerous. They may be right, because Ernest King is about to shape the entire trajectory of the war at sea, and not everyone will agree with how he does it. The question is no longer whether King is abrasive. The question is whether Roosevelt is betting the survival of the U.S. Navy on the right man. And in 1942, that bet is far from certain. March 27, 1942, 11:40 p.m. off Cape Hatteras. The sea is black glass. No moon, no horizon, just a low thrum of a merchant engine pushing through darkness. Then, impact, a white streak under the surface. A flash, a concussion that splits the hull open like tin. Flames claw into the sky. Oil spreads across the water, burning bright orange against the Atlantic night. Men leap overboard into freezing surf. Somewhere beneath them, unseen, a periscope slips away. Another ship gone. In Washington, the reports arrive in stacks. Tankers, freighters, passenger liners. The Atlantic coast is lit at night by American cities that refuse blackout orders, making merchant ships perfect silhouettes for German submarines. This is the slaughter sailors call the second happy time. And the man responsible for stopping it sits behind a desk in the Navy Department, Ernest J. King. Critics sharpen their knives. British officials are blunt. Adopt the convoy system immediately. It worked in 1917. It will work again. The Royal Navy already uses it. But King resists. Not because he doubts convoys. Because he lacks escorts. Destroyers are stretched thin. The Pacific demands carriers and cruisers after attack on Pearl Harbor. Japan surges toward Australia. The Philippines collapse. The Navy is fighting a two-ocean war with a fleet built for one. King must choose. Protect shipping in the Atlantic, or strike back in the Pacific. He refuses to surrender initiative. While critics accuse him of stubbornness, he is calculating something far larger. America's shipyards are awakening. The industrial surge is just beginning. Liberty ships slide into water faster every month. Escort carriers, small, unglamorous, are entering production. King believes time is a weapon, but time costs lives. In April 1942 alone, U-boats sink hundreds of thousands of tons of Allied shipping. Newspapers begin to question naval leadership openly. Senators whisper that King is too proud to accept British help, that he distrusts them to the point of blindness. At a tense Allied meeting, King sits across from British First Sea Lord Dudley Pound. The air is thick with tobacco smoke and restrained irritation. The British push for centralized anti-submarine command. King listens. Then he speaks, voice flat. The United States Navy will conduct its own operations. It sounds like defiance. It is. King has no intention of subordinating American strategy. He will coordinate, but not yield control. To many, it looks like arrogance. To Franklin D. Roosevelt, it looks like steel. Roosevelt understands coalition politics. He knows the British are seasoned, experienced in Atlantic convoy warfare. He also knows that America must emerge from this war not as a junior partner, but as a naval superpower. King ensures that, quietly, methodically, he reorganizes Atlantic command structures. He accelerates destroyer escort production. He demands improved sonar. He pushes for long-range patrol aircraft to close the air gap in mid-Atlantic waters where U-boats hunt freely. He makes one decision that angers nearly everyone. He insists the Pacific offensive continue. While German submarines burn tankers off New Jersey, King supports planning for carrier strikes against Japan. The Doolittle raid launches in April 1942. Then comes the Coral Sea. Then Midway. You can almost hear the critics. How can he think about offense when the coast is on fire? Because King believes defensive war is losing war. And in June 1942, at the Battle of Midway, that philosophy pays off. 4 Japanese carriers sink beneath Pacific waves. The balance shifts. King says little publicly. But inside Navy circles, the narrative begins to change. Yes, the Atlantic losses are brutal. Yes, he resisted British pressure. But by late 1942, convoys are firmly established. Escort carriers and hunter-killer groups begin to stalk the hunters. Radar improves. Code breaking tightens a noose. The U-boats start dying faster than they can be replaced. King's strategy, industrial surge plus relentless pressure in two oceans, is beginning to show its shape. Still, He makes enemies at a breathtaking pace. He clashes repeatedly with Army Chief of Staff George C. Marshall over landing craft allocations. He fights with British commanders over Mediterranean priorities. He is curt, dismissive, often openly skeptical of Allied proposals. More than one senior official quietly suggests to Roosevelt that King's temperament is dangerous. Too rigid, too uncooperative, too powerful. Roosevelt listens and keeps him. Why? Because King delivers results. By early 1943, U-boat losses skyrocket. The Atlantic tide turns decisively. Shipping lanes stabilize. American troops and equipment pour into Britain for the coming invasion of Europe. The sea lanes are open. The Navy is expanding at a pace the world has never seen. And Ernest King sits at the center of it all, unapologetic, unyielding. But the greatest test of his leadership is not in the Atlantic. It is thousands of miles away, across coral atolls and jungle islands, where strategy is about to become a knife fight between giants. And this time, the enemy will not be German submarines. It will be Japan's empire, and the argument over how to destroy it will nearly tear the American High Command apart. January 14th, 1943, 10:32 a.m. Casablanca, French Morocco. Rain lashes the windows of the Anfa Hotel. Inside, maps of the Pacific stretch across a long wooden table. New Guinea, the Solomons, the Central Pacific. Blue arrows, red arrows, competing futures. At one end of the table sits Admiral Ernest J. King, jaw set, eyes sharp behind rimless glasses. Across from him, General George C. Marshall. Calm, controlled, calculating. Between them, like a conductor holding back an orchestra, President Franklin D. Roosevelt watches in silence. This is not just a strategy meeting. It is a contest of the shape of the Pacific War. The Army wants priority in Europe. Germany first is the official policy. Marshal the resources. Cross the Channel. Defeat Hitler. King agrees in principle, but not at the expense of momentum against Japan. He leans forward, voice measured but edged. If we allow the Pacific to stagnate, we hand the initiative back. He wants to drive through the Central Pacific, across the Gilbert Islands, the Marshalls, toward the Marianas. A naval-led thrust, carrier warfare, amphibious assaults. But in the Southwest Pacific, General Douglas MacArthur is advancing through New Guinea, promising to return to the Philippines. 2 routes, 2 commanders, 2 egos, 1 ocean. King distrusts MacArthur's publicity machine. He dislikes divided command. He dislikes inefficiency even more. But Roosevelt sees political value in MacArthur's vow, "I shall return." So the president makes a decision that would drive lesser men into fury. Both offensives will proceed. 2 massive, parallel campaigns across the Pacific. The industrial burden will be staggering. Landing craft, carriers, Marines, army divisions, all must be split. King does not storm out. He does not resign. He recalculates. If there will be 2 drives, the navies must be relentless. He pushes hard for new Essex-class carriers, 4 fast battleships to screen them, for overwhelming naval air power. He champions the concept of island hopping, bypass strongholds, seize key airfields, isolate Japanese garrisons. It is ruthless logic. Some army planners worry he is turning the war into a Navy showpiece. King does not care about appearances. He cares about geometry. Look at the map, he tells them without saying it. Every captured atoll becomes a runway. Every runway pushes B-29 bombers closer to Tokyo. At Casablanca and later at the Tehran Conference, Roosevelt balances personalities like explosives. British Prime Minister Winston Churchill favors Mediterranean operations. Marshall pushes for the cross-channel invasion. King guards Pacific momentum like a bulldog over bone. It is not polite. It is not smooth. But it works. In November 1943, U.S. forces storm Tarawa in the Gilbert Islands. The fighting is savage. Coral reefs stole landing craft. Marines wade through machine gun fire. King studies the casualty lists. He does not flinch. Amphibious warfare is bloody, but it is moving. By early 1944, the Marshalls fall. Then the Marianas, Saipan, Tinian, Guam. In June 1944, the Battle of the Philippine Sea erupts, a carrier clash so one-sided American pilots nickname it the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. Japanese naval aviation is shattered. King's vision of carrier supremacy has proven decisive. And yet, inside Washington, the murmurs continue. He is too domineering, some say, too dismissive of allies, too concentrated with power. No other officer holds both operational command and administrative control of an entire service branch. What if he miscalculates? What if his stubbornness fractures Allied unity? Roosevelt hears it all. He smiles that thin, knowing smile. Because Roosevelt understands something fundamental about Ernest King. He is not in the job to be liked. He is there to win. King is not sentimental about alliances. He cooperates when it serves strategy. He pushes back when it does not. He demands autonomy for American naval operations, not out of vanity, but out of long-term vision. He sees the post-war world already forming. Sea power will define it, and America must dominate it. By late 1944, the U.S. Navy is the largest in history. Thousands of ships, dozens of fleet carriers, an industrial machine unmatched by any nation alive. King's fingerprints on all of it. But one final gamble remains, one that will test not just strategy, but endurance. The Philippines, MacArthur's promise, a divided command structure moving toward the same objective. And beneath it all, a question growing louder. Did Roosevelt keep Ernest King because he had no better option? Or because King was the only man ruthless enough to finish what Pearl Harbor began? The answer will emerge in the bloodiest naval battle in history. Section 4. The Gamble at Leyte and the President's Bet. October 23, 1944. 6:58 a.m. Sibuyan Sea, Philippines. The sky is low and bruised with storm clouds. American carrier deck shudder as Hellcats roar into the air. Below, through breaks in the overcast, Japanese battleships move in formation, gray steel cutting through dark water. On the flagship hundreds of miles away, Admiral Ernest J. King stands over a situation map. Leyte Gulf. 4 separate Japanese task forces. Decoys. Feints. A desperate, complex trap. This is the moment Japan bets everything. And it is also the moment that will vindicate or destroy King's grand design. For 2 years, he has pushed relentlessly across the Central Pacific. Carriers, fast task forces, amphibious assaults at breathtaking scale. He backed the drive through the Marianas, knowing it would force Japan into a decisive fleet action. Now that fleet action has come. But it is chaos. Admiral Halsey races north after what appears to be Japan's main carrier force, unaware that it is largely a decoy stripped of aircraft. Meanwhile, powerful Japanese surface ships surge toward vulnerable American landing forces at Leyte. In Washington, the reports arrive fragmented and alarming. Confusion, gaps in coverage, destroyers outgunned by battleships. King reads every dispatch. He does not panic. He does not lash out publicly. He trusts the structure he built. For years, critics claimed he centralized too much authority, that combining Chief of Naval Operations and Commander-in-Chief, U.S. Fleet in one man was dangerous, that no single officer should hold that much power in wartime. But now, that concentration of authority means something critical. There is no paralysis at the top, no inter-service squabbling over naval command, no split direction. The Navy moves as one organism. When Japanese battleships break through near Sama and engage lightly armed escort carriers, American destroyers charge anyway, torpedoes running, smoke screens billowing. The fighting is ferocious, improvised, heroic, and ultimately decisive. By October 26, 1944, the Battle of Leyte Gulf becomes the largest naval battle in history and the death blow to Japan's surface fleet. It is over. Japan will never again mount a major naval offensive. In the quiet after the storm, as casualty figures settle and the scale of victory becomes clear, something shifts in Washington. The critics grow quieter. King's Pacific gamble, 2 parallel offensives, carrier dominance, industrial overmatch, has culminated in annihilation of the enemy fleet. And still, he is not finished. Kamikazes begin their grim descent from the skies. Okinawa looms ahead, a fortress island that will bleed the Navy white if mishandled. King pushes shipbuilding harder. More destroyers, more radar picket ships, more aircraft. He supports Admiral Nimiz's advance toward Iwo Jima and Okinawa, knowing the cost will be staggering, but also knowing those airfields will tighten the noose around Japan's home islands. Inside the White House, President Franklin D. Roosevelt watches the map of the Pacific shrink under American blue. He has heard every complaint about Ernest King. Too abrasive, too distrustful of allies, too rigid. But Roosevelt values something above harmony: results. He once described King as the most even-tempered man in the Navy, a dry joke from a president who understood temperament better than anyone. Roosevelt never wanted a courtier. He wanted a hammer. King provided it. When Roosevelt dies in April 1945, the war is nearly won. The U.S. Navy dominates every ocean. Its fleet dwarfs anything in history. Sea lanes are secure. Amphibious doctrine perfected. Carrier aviation supreme. Ernest King will retire later that year. He will never be beloved. He will never be easy. But the numbers are undeniable. From the ashes of attack on Pearl Harbor to the burning horizon of Okinawa, the U.S. Navy transformed into an unstoppable force. And Roosevelt kept him, despite the friction, despite the politics, despite the complaints. Because in total war, comfort is irrelevant. Victory is not. In the end, the question was never whether Ernest King was difficult. The question was whether anyone else could have built a navy that large, that fast, and wielded it without hesitation. History answered, and it answered at sea. END.